Yankees Files podcast. We are back. I'm Will Harris, your Alek Whipple, and the rest of you are fans of a team that, if that team's game is correctly called due to rain, will win its 23rd game, tying it for the major league lead. That is, of course, I forget which subjects and verbs I used, honestly, but I'm talking about the New York Yankees, okay? Most wins in the American League as it currently stands. If the game as it should be is called, that is currently in progress in a rain delay against the Tigers, they will have 23 wins, which would tie the Phillies for the most in baseball. Okay. Now we understand that. Whipple, there's a lot to get into about this week, including multiple games that I attended at Camden Yards, including hopefully a sweep of the Detroit Tigers, including a possible resurgence from one Aaron James Judge, the captain of the New York Yankees, including his first career ejection. But before all of that, how are you? How are finals going?
That was a lot. That was a lot of qualifiers. I wish the game was just over because I feel like I'm more confused than when we started this podcast.
The game should absolutely be over.
I'm doing well. It's law school finals are tough, but it's a lot easier when you can turn on the TV and watch your team win every night. And, that's why the beginning of this week I was a little down. I was dejected. I said to you earlier, the Yankees have this thing going on where they start off the weeks and they're not doing so well. The vibes aren't as good. And, it warms my heart to be able to get on the podcast and, the stressful time in my life, but be able to get on the podcast and talk about, again, qualifying, hopefully 4 out of 5 wins, 23 hopeful wins, 22 of those are not qualified. Like it's been a good week, which started off pretty rough. And I think there's a lot to get into, a lot to be excited about. The offense is still kind of confusing. The bullpen still has some question marks, but at the end of the day, like you can't argue with the results that they're getting and the blips that this team has gone through. I think have always in the last few weeks pretty clearly, as we've said, the ups and downs. You got to have, if you have the downs, you got to have the ups. And the Yankees have shown that any downs that they're having, like they're able to bounce back from. There haven't been any sustained, like 2 and 5 weeks. I think the worst week they've had is like 500 or slightly below, which at the end of the year, I mean, you have weeks like that, mix in the good weeks, you're going to have a pretty good team. I feel like the Yankees are, they still haven't clicked on all levels yet, but there's, these stretches that they go on where the pitching looks dominant and the offense just puts together some quick runs. I can't wait for when that becomes more commonplace, but the fact that you're leading the league in wins when you're able to, like 50% of your games are kind of hit or miss offensively, I think it's impressive is what I would say. My main takeaway is that we're not getting on these podcasts and like really being upset, even though there's a lot of reasons to be upset. And I think that's because of the ability of this team to bounce back from those down stretches.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the offense. I think a lot of people, possibly including us, have taken issue with some things about the offense, but what it all comes down to, honestly, for me, has been, well, maybe there are two things. The first is the production has not been steady. So I think there are a lot of people who have watched games from the Yankees this year. They've been shut out numerous times. They've been held to, 2 or fewer runs a number of times. They've won some of those games, as they did on Friday. But people see the Yankees struggle offensively in a game, and they conclude that the offense is bad. I want to establish a baseline here. We're talking about the team that currently ranks 5th in WRC plus, ahead of the Astros, who, for all of their woes, are hitting, ahead of the Braves, ahead of the Phillies, ahead of the Guardians, ahead of both teams that just played in the World Series. Like, the offense has been good. And as I said, it has not been steady. It's been very up and down, and it's had, peaks and valleys, to be sure, with a particular peak in Milwaukee, obviously. But this team throughout the year has really, they've gotten a lot of hits and they've gotten on base. The one thing they have not done consistently is slug, and that comes through in games like the Monday game in Baltimore when they got 10 hits. They got 7 hits, 3 walks. They put 10 runners on base and didn't score. That's hard to do. Like, it's hard to have that many on base events and not score. And that gets to the other thing that I think has plagued this offense, and that's cluster luck. The Yankees have had pretty terrible cluster luck. For those who are not initiated, cluster luck refers to basically good things happening all at once for you. So the Yankees got 7 hits on Monday against the Orioles. If they had gotten all 7 hits in one inning, for example, to be extreme, they would have scored more than 0 runs. But they didn't get all 7 hits in one inning, and they didn't get all 3 walks in one inning either. They spread them out. And because those good things did not cluster together, where we get the term cluster luck, they managed to get shut out. And cluster luck, of course, giveth and taketh away. It took away on Monday, and then it gave on Friday when the Yankees strung together 4 hits in a row at the end of that game to get the win. And I think when you put the inconsistency and the at times lack of cluster luck together, you can have an offense that on the whole grades out quite well. And that's where we get the confidence that they will, ultimately be good, but can be extremely frustrating to watch, and frustrating to watch almost at no fault of their own. Like the double plays, I blame them for. The lack of slugging, I a little bit blame them for. But like getting, 10 on base events in one game and getting nothing out of it, it's kind of hard to blame them for that. So I don't know. How have you felt watching this team? Because we know factually that the offense is good, at least relative to the rest of the league. Like, there are only 4 teams that have been better. But at the same time, there have been many games that have been really a slog to watch. So how are you dealing with that? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember, team, offense. I mean, offense is down pretty majorly in the league right now. And like you said in one of your tweets, I mean, it might just be April, but it also could just be, a different offensive environment. I think
Yep.
Where WRC plus takes into account versus the numbers that people see on their screen every day when they're watching players hit. I mean, maybe that's just a problem with baseball broadcasts, and we need to have more normalized statistics that really show in context how good or relatively good this team is, because it's definitely tough to see some of those numbers and then square that with how players are hitting. But I think the point is offense is down in the league, and the Yankees relatively are one of the better teams. Compared to last year's offense, I just think it's a completely different experience. And even parts of the second half of 2022, that's what bothers me when it says, or people say, oh, this is just 2023 with Juan Soto, what the offense wise. And I just think that's so far from the truth. 2023,
this team is a 331 on base. There were long stretches of last year when their on base percentage was under 300.
Yeah, I mean, last year, and I said this at points last year, last year was so uncharacteristically bad because of how poor their on-base ability was, combined with the lack of slugging. Now, the on-base ability is definitely one of the standouts this year. I mean, this is their best on-base percentage at this point, if they maintain this for a full season since 2019. But
4th in the league right now.
4th in the league. I mean, you can't complain with that. And I think the slugging is definitely down from where it can be, but I think you have a lot of different factors to look at that. And relatively, it's where maybe it will be based on the rest of the league. So some of it's expectations, some of it is understanding this lineup is deeper. The hitters have better approaches, in my opinion. The slugging, when it's there, it basically makes this team unstoppable. And every piece of evidence we have is that it will be there. I think it's frustrating to go into Baltimore and score 6 runs in a series, but I also think from my opinion, the most frustrating thing in baseball is not scoring 15 runs in Milwaukee and 2 runs in Baltimore. It's when you score 3 runs every game because like you just
Yeah.
put yourself in that zone of like you don't win anything. And so watching this team, I would rather have the Yankees team that can win the blowouts. Is going to be all or nothing. Sometimes wins the nothing game, sometimes they don't. But like when this team is on, you're putting up numbers that the Yankees teams last year did not do. I mean, like last year's team was really bad offensively. This year's team is at least like for the most part, I think their on base ability is a lot better. The guys are staying on the field. We haven't gotten the like parade of, the Willie Calhouns and Billy McKinney's just coming in April. I think it's a
I
totally
believe
different
it's
experience.
Willie's Calhoun and Billy's McKinney. And if you're talking about April, we need to acknowledge all the Franchi's Cordero.
I'm trying not to say Jake Bowers because I didn't want to throw him in here. But
well, yeah, because he wouldn't belong in that discussion. And frankly, neither does Billy McKinney, but
fair. Like, it's the vibe of like the
I know what you're talking about.
Playing already. So all of those things, I think, just make it a different experience. And again, I would rather have the team that can win, 100% of its like blowouts and then, loses, because we've seen the Yankees teams that score 3 runs a game and lose by 1 run like half the times in a week. That was last year's team. It's just a fundamentally different experience, I think. No matter how frustrating you think this team is, the frustration comes because of how good they can be. Last year, it was because there just wasn't enough there. And that was from opening day to the end of the year.
So on, I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. I pointed out that at that time, the Yankees were 16-4 when they homer and 3-7 when they don't. 16-4 is an 800 winning percentage. 3-7 is a 300 winning percentage. That means that turning a homerless game into a game in which you have hit a homer is worth half a win. It changes your winning percentage from 300 to 800. That is why I'm concerned still about the lack of slugging. I'm psyched about how they're getting on base. I'm glad that Judge is figuring it out because that'll help the slugging. I'm glad that Austin Wells hit a ball over the fence. I'm glad that Gleyber Torres hit a ball over the fence. It had been a long time since he had hit a world famous home run, and he did. I'm glad that I saw Oswaldo Cabrera hit one of the weirder world famous home runs that I've ever seen. So that's all good for the slugging. But the bottom line for me is the home run is really important. It's world famous for a reason. And the Yankees, as of right now, are 4th in the league in them. So I'm excited about that. But even though they're like top 10 in batting average, they're still like 10th in slugging. Like, I just want them to get more extra base hits, particularly the home run. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Yankees team that hit the most home runs of any Yankees team ever is also the one that won the most games since 2009. Which I found, I think that same day, they had the fewest homerless games. They only had 23 homerless games of any Yankees team from 2010 or 2009 on. They hit the most home runs and they won the most games. So like, it just feels like it's right there. And, obviously I don't want them to sacrifice. Well, I don't mean that. I'm fine with them sacrificing some amount of getting on base to hit more home runs. And it's not obvious to me with the players that are on this team that trade-off is totally balanced properly or optimally yet. And I would just really like to see them hit the ball over the fence a little bit more often, or otherwise juice that slugging percentage pretty significantly in, a combination of other ways.
I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say the Yankees need to be, if not first in the league, so far up the leaderboard that like it would take a Herculean effort for them to be second, a la 2019. Yeah. And it's not the juice ball year. So like, obviously they're not going to hit 306 home runs again, sadly.
Yeah. But ordinally. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's like the same thing with like on base percentage. Like we're not talking about a team that like, we're like, oh, if they can be, kind of in the top group, they'll be fine. Like the Yankees historically have been successful when they lead the league in home runs and are very close to the top in the league in on-base percentage. And it's high expectations, but like it's the Yankees. They have to do that. And I think fourth, you can be disappointed with fourth. Like you can like the trend, but fourth is still too low for where this team needs to be based on like how the Yankees operate. Because if you're not if you're not first, if you're fourth or fifth or whatever, then that's when the stuff, people start complaining about Stanton's too slow and they're unathletic. And I don't want to hear anymore about the Yankees are less athletic than the Orioles, so they're not. That's why they didn't win the games. Like they didn't win the games because they didn't hit balls over the fence. When the Yankees do a hit and run, everyone's like, "Oh, this team is so much better." That's John Boy annoys me to no end because it's like the most simplistic baseball analysis. Whenever like one hit and run or bunt happens, it's like this Yankees team is so much different than before. They've bunting and hitting and running and like that's not why they're better. That's not why they're good or bad. It's just that play they happen to make in the moment, which I guarantee you they've made before in other years. Like it's cool when it works, but by no means is that the measure of success. So I think we're allowed to have our expectations high. Like it's not like we're asking, a middle of the road team to do this. Like this is a team that should go through this league, not easily, but like based on how the level of talent that they have, like there is no reason that they shouldn't be able to go through this league in terms of like home runs, in terms of winning. I mean, that's the talent they've had. They're showing it. Everything lines up. I just think it's a very fair expectation. And I hope we're trending in that way. I think last weekend definitely helped, but it's tough when for the first, 5 games in a week, you don't score more than 2 runs. So the inconsistency hurts in that regard. Some of it's going to be the weather getting warmer. At the end of the day, I'd rather have the 15-run games, the 2-run games, but you can't like make the 2-run game weeks, like a common theme. Like this weekend's the Astros. Yeah. Like if that happens for a second straight week, start to be concerned, I think.
The Astros, as we speak, Josh Hader just gave up a go-ahead home run to Cal Raleigh. So I remember a lot of people insisting that the Astros spending $5 billion or whatever it was on Josh Hader cemented them as the better team than the Yankees. And, they were out there addressing their weaknesses and the Yankees were relying on scrubs. I would direct people to Clayton Walter Holmes's Fangraphs page or Baseball Reference page or MLB.com player page or anywhere that you can see his stats. Maybe your local newspaper can point out that he has a 0.00 ERA this year. And Josh Hader sure doesn't. And I know I said this on last week's podcast, but I want to emphasize it. Few things are more important to me than the Astros continuing to be terrible, especially the Astros investing in players that they expect to be really good and then those players being bad. And I'm glad the Yankees have already won the season series against the Astros, but can you imagine if the Yankees were to sweep the Astros at home this week and go 7-0 against them for the season and just bury them? Oh my God, it would be like the best thing ever. Anyway,
I think we have to look at the Astros as a cautionary tale for people that want both anti-analytics to be more central in a front office, but also people who want to advocate for change for no reason, because the Astros basically have overhauled and gutted their staff and empowered. I think Jeff Bagwell is like
Jeff Bagwell. Yeah, it's the Killer Bees are running the Astros, and they are very aptly named as killers.
So, like, if you criticize Hal Steinbrenner, criticize Brian Cashman, but if you look at what's going on there, I think there is some argument for both empowering analytics, empowering consistency, stability, not letting a crazy owner start signing like Jose Abreu to 3-year deals, because that
I hope Jose Abreu is having a phenomenal trip to West Palm Beach, by the way. Very nice part of the country.
To be fair to Jose Abreu, like he's probably having the best time out of the Astros right now.
I would much rather be in the Palm Beaches than in Houston, Texas, which is a concrete slab in a swamp. Like that area of the country is not habitable by humans. And someone was like, we're just going to build 1 million parking lots and Like, people are going to try to live here, and every so often it's going to get demolished by a hurricane, and we're just going to be okay with that. Like, Houston, Texas is not a habitable place. No one should live there. It is awful. And the fact that the guys on the Astros, who I think are generally bad people, have to live there, I think is great. And the fact that the Astros are bad is also terrific. But yeah, going from Houston, Texas to the Palm Beaches is a phenomenal upgrade. Like, I don't know how they're going to get him to come back to Houston at this point. They might not be able to.
Yeah, I mean, the way things are going, he might come back to a very different clubhouse.
Hope so.
Hope so. I mean, I want to turn it over to you since we mentioned Clay Holmes, Oswaldo Cabrera. Got to talk about your Camden trip, your experience of both being a curse and a curse breaker, and maybe what went into that, and also watching one of your favorite pitchers, maybe two of your favorite pitchers. Now Luis Heels kind of lightened it up, be really dominant, because that was what a pitching game on Wednesday. I mean, that was really fun to watch.
So I'll start off by saying that when I signed up to go to 2 Yankee games in a week and see 18 innings at least of them playing on offense, I did not expect that they would go scoreless in 17 of those innings.
Yeah.
That was a little tough. So I'll also say, like, I don't really have anything against the Orioles. I know that some Yankees fans are really, really bothered by the Orioles. They don't bother me very much. I think part of that is, I obviously have friends who are Orioles fans, and, it's fun in the city when the Orioles are good. So maybe I just appreciate that. But honestly, outside of Anthony Santander, Austin Hayes, and Grayson Rodriguez, and Craig Kimbrell, obviously, there's no one on the Orioles that like really gets under my skin, that I really don't like. So I do enjoy that I can go to these games with, against a division rival and not feel like I'm in complete enemy territory. This is very different for me from going to a game in Boston, for example, and I appreciate that. Second, I thought Clark Schmidt was phenomenal on Monday. To give up just so first of all, obviously Gunnar comes up, leads off the game with a home run, and then Adley crushes a ball. I think Mountcastle crushed a ball. Like, he was getting hit hard in that first inning. Or maybe it was O'Hearn who crushed the ball because they were stacking the lefties. I thought, oh my gosh, I am in for a long night when Clark came out in the first. And then he just mowed guys down the rest of the way. Like, he was phenomenal. And the Orioles stacked the lineup with talented lefty hitters. We know that Clark has struggled throughout his career to get lefties out. He was awesome. So that was great. I loved what I saw out of him. But then the other side was the cluster luck that I was talking about. The Yankees had 7 hits and 3 walks and didn't score. There were only a couple instances when it really felt like they threatened. There was obviously, that was the day with the play where Stanton, Wells hit the ball to Santander in right field. And now Stanton was in an impossible situation because it really did look like Westberg could have caught the ball. And then, once it went directly to Santander, he was dead to rights. But that was really disappointing. It just felt like everything in that game went the Orioles' way. There were a couple of like weird bounces where, a ball goes right to someone or whatever. So that sucked, but it was really nice to see how well the team pitched. It was nice to see a multi-hit game for Gleyber Torres. It was disappointing to see the impact that the Baltimore had, because Oswaldo Cabrera hit a ball in the 9th inning that would have been a home run a few years ago. But who
hit a ball over Baltimore? Kyle Higashioka, which you saw.
Also Gary Sanchez, which I saw earlier this year.
But I just always remember your reaction on that home run. That's one that will stick in my mind.
I could not believe he hit that out. So anyway, the Monday game, aside from Clark Schmidt, who was phenomenal, the Monday game kind of sucked. Wednesday was much better. So I went to the game with Jacob at Nestor Caddy on Twitter, who famously got a bowl cut because Gleyber Torres hit a home run last year. So that was cool. And I saw what I think is like kind of unequivocally the best start of Luis Gil's career to this point. It was, I mean, he's just unbelievably good. And his stuff is phenomenal. He is absolutely electric. He was missing bats frequently against a team that, doesn't strike out a ton, and against, some guys who certainly don't swing and miss very much. And then Oswaldo Cabrera, of course, comes up in the 5th inning and hits a ball. So I was sitting kind of down the left field line in the second deck, and Cabrera comes up and he pulls the ball down the right field line, toward the high wall. And I could tell it wasn't going to get over the railing that people stand behind, but it doesn't need to get over that railing to be a home run. It just needs to get over the top of like the scoreboard wall. So I'm looking and I'm thinking, first of all, I don't think this ball is going to stay fair. Like I thought it was going to end up over by that like garage door, basically. And second of all, I don't think that this ball is going to get over the wall. So I'm looking for a carom, and I just never see one. And I couldn't tell where it is. So it was only by the reaction of the Yankee fans who were out in the corner that I could actually tell that it was a home run. So that was great. Great to see Oswaldo Cabrera go yard. Sorry?
Did they review that? Like
they reviewed it very quickly, yeah. Okay. It was great to see Oswaldo Cabrera go yard, especially the day or two after I had declared his Linsanity run over.
Off Corbin Burns, no less.
Off Corbin Burns. So that was the other thing, was I was going to the Luis Gil Corbin Burns game, and Corbin Burns in his career has been great at striking guys out and great at not walking guys. Luis Gil has only been good at one of those, and the Orioles are this phenomenal offense. I did not see the Yankees winning that game, so I was very disappointed. I felt like they kind of, missed their chance against Grayson, and then against Kramer the next night as well. And that, it was just going to be down to Rodon to see if they could get even one win in the series. But Luis Gil was nails. And then, of course, we got to talk about Clayton Walter Holmes. I think that was the most dominant outing he's had as a Yankee. It has to be, right?
It was pretty nasty. Those pitches were...
I
couldn't believe that.
For him to come in and strike out Gunnar and Adley with a runner in scoring position, especially when the narrative about him early in the year from Yankee fans who aren't smart was, we need a closer who's going to strike guys out. Clay is always letting him put the ball in play, blah, blah, blah. He always gets bailed out by his fielders or whatever. For him to come in and strike out those two guys looking as nasty as he looked, they didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
After the Gunnar at bat, I was convinced that no one on the planet was going to be able to hit what he was throwing. And then, of course, infield single in the bottom of the 9th. It's not a Clay Holmes outing unless someone gets on base without the ball leaving the infield. And then just, weak ground ball, game over. It was an absolute delight to watch Clay Holmes pitch and nail down a win there. And, I think that might have reversed the curse, because rolling 3 games or rolling 4 games, I think I was 1-3 in my last 4 in Baltimore, going back to the first game of the 2023 season. And then after that game, I went to the shutout Santander walk-off game. But then since then, it's the Judge Stanton Higashioka homer win. the next Grayson Rodriguez shutout, and then the win that I just attended. So maybe the tide is turning.
Wow, you're shifting the sample size. I feel like I
Well,
feel like
it's
I'm
2-2
talking to
in the
myself
last
like
4.
3
It's
years ago.
it's 2-2 in the last 4 too.
I know. This is the roles have certainly reversed. And I said to you, to be fair to both of us, it's really hard when you go on the road to a team that your team is playing against and they're good. Like if I
Yeah.
lived in Boston now, like it'd be a different story. You living in Baltimore like 3 years ago was a different story. It's just that's how the like teams are less likely to win on the road. Teams are less likely to, beat their division rivals. The combination is tough. So, but it is like last year, you definitely experienced your Brooks Kriske game with the Santander walk-off.
Oh
And
my
I feel
gosh.
like, you got to hit the bottom. That might have been the bottom for you. And now you're kind of rising out of it. And that's, awesome. I think you've got a bright future ahead of you in this league. I'm glad you didn't let the one step, momentary blip in the road get you down. Plus, you got the Gary Sanchez shirt coming to you soon. So I feel like you
That's
also
true. So
a wardrobe potential change.
that's true. So the elephant in the room is you advised me to skip a start with the Jabba Rules shirt,
As they would for
and
Jabba.
as they would for Jabba,
Ironically.
And
No,
because
actually, the Jabba rules with your shirt would be like you wear it for 2 innings and then you have to go
exactly the next change. So I got the Jabba Rules shirt in 2019, and it was undefeated until I think it was Orioles home opener last year. And then I wore it to the Santander game. And then I wore it to the second Grayson shutout. So it was undefeated, and then it was 0-3
Did you wear
after
it the
that.
game we went to?
No.
Oh.
So for this game, I wore exactly what I wore to the game we went to. And now they're they won consecutive games. So it's one of my friends likes to point out that like that meme of like the two guys on the bus and one is looking one way and is happy and one is looking the other and is sad. There's a version of that where both guys are thinking both guys are thinking most things aren't under my control. And being a sports fan is a great lesson in most things not being under your control. But when you switch shirts from one that's on a losing streak and then you win, it kind of feels like some things are under your control. So I'm excited to see how the Gary shirt performs.
I didn't know that you didn't wear it last year when we went and then you wore it again.
Yeah.
That actually is, if I had known that in the text, I would have not even I would have just said, you got to drop it.
Yeah.
It's not skip a start. It's like you're on the DFA trading log.
Send it to Scranton.
But you know what? Maybe like in due time, you can kind of work it back into the rotation.
Yeah.
A rehab start or two. You got to take it to the Norfolk Tides game, like a Scranton rehab outing.
So that's the other thing that I'm thinking is like, so there are a number of Orioles fans I've learned who misremember the Delman Young double from that ALDS against the Tigers as being given up by Jabba Chamberlain. It wasn't. I think it was Soria, but it was not Jabba. Jabba was on that team though, and I can't help but wonder if wearing the Jabba Rules shirt to Camden Yards against a good Orioles team kind of invokes that series, which Jabba, of course, was on the losing team. Like, I don't know if it like brings in some of that mojo. So I might have to step back with it. And that's why it works so well at Yankee Stadium. Cause he was on that team and they won the World Series and all that. Like, I don't know.
I think the move is you give it a rest, but you bring it back at Yankee Stadium. Maybe it's a Camden ban, but
yeah,
I think the coaches, gonna have a meeting, maybe some time at the developmental league in Tampa. But I'm glad that you addressed the problem. It's on the the injured list. You just don't want to keep running it out there because, like I said, I think eventually you would have just had to get rid of it. Now I think you've at least saved it for a potential future, but. It's this is dark magic beyond our control.
Exactly.
I'm just sorry that you have to go through this. I know as a curse holder, a former curse holder, Ryan Garcia is the real curse holder. I just want to say that when we have these conversations, he's like, I've only seen 2 wins in the last 10 years or something. Like that makes me feel like it's like we're like, the rich kids, like, high class problems. And he's like, I've never had happiness.
No, that's actually a very good point. Is like I have at times lost the perspective that from the time the 2010 season ended to the time the 2023 season began, I did not attend a Yankees loss. Like that's insane.
Yeah,
So we do have to ask, and remember in 2021, whenever Ryan would watch a game, they would lose. And when he wouldn't watch, they would win. Like I do think at some point there's a conversation to be had about the responsible way for Ryan to interact with the New York Yankees.
Right. It's for him. I think, he needs like a total overhaul of his mechanics.
But also let's not gloss over. Things got bad for you for a time.
I was going to say, like, I was actually, if you take out Fenway, like, I actually have a very respectable record, but 2021 was a really dark time. My Fenway career, I mean, I've only seen them win one time in like 9 or 10 games. So me at Fenway is far worse than you at Camden. I mean, I still remember it. It was 2019. Paxton pitched a shutout. It's like happiest moment of my life. And, I was stupid enough the next time they played to think, I'm going to go to like 6 games in 2 months. And the worst part of that was the sweep in September when I had moved from Boston. And my brother, of all people, going to that Sunday Night Baseball Stanton, the Santa Maria. Like, it just felt like, rubbing.
That was the message of like, you were the curse.
It was like the chosen child is not you. It's like, it's your fault. It's not your family. It is you specifically. But
Yankees
and I
win.
Did they call it?
Game is called. Yankees win.
Woo. The funny thing though is I said when I left Fenway I wasn't going back for 5 years, and I've held to that. Even though my girlfriend is in Boston, I'm in year 3 right now, and I don't plan on going this summer. So I in 2026 I will go back. That is what I've said.
Part of the reason that you won't go this summer is because you'll be in New York and you'll have a much better stadium to attend.
I'm very, very happy about that. But yeah, well, catch me in 2026 going to break the curse, but not a moment before then.
Yeah, I think that's the right choice. And, I guess it's a little bit different for me because I'll be moving back and forth between Baltimore and New York for a little bit.
At that level yet. Like I was in I said it as I was like 6 beers deep walking away from Fenway, like hearing the cheers behind me. I turned around and screamed at the stadium like 5 years. I still remember that. Yeah, like that's 5 incredible. Years. And you know what? I've held my end of the bargain.
And we appreciate that. We really do. So the Yankees now have 23 wins.
Remove the
pretty good. The Yankees are tied for the major league lead in wins. And look, Whipple, there are a lot of ways you can analyze baseball, right? You can look at run scoring and run prevention and run differential, and you can look at WAR, and you can look at WRC plus, and you can look at ERA, and you can look at fielding independent pitching, and you can look at weighted on base average. But at the end of the day, and this might strike you as surprising or controversial, I'm going to assert that what really matters is whether a team wins or loses.
No, I think it's the grit and the hustle and the tenacity. If you're leading an X grit, then it counteracts the win.
Wait. Well, we have to. Is it X grit or is it accountability that really matters?
Oh God, yeah. See, it's fun when they're winning because when they're losing, we have conversations like last summer where I think we're just yelling at each other whether Boone properly disciplined Josh Donaldson for like not feel. What a stupid time that was.
Well, isn't it funny that when a team is winning, there's never a question of, are these guys being held accountable? Because here's the thing. It's the same guys. Broadly, it is the same guys. It's the same manager. So is last year they were losing because Boone wasn't coming out and publicly trashing the players. This year they're winning because Boone isn't publicly coming out and trashing the players. Like, this is of course, the absurdity of all that, like, accountability stuff. But anyway, the Yankees are really good, and I think we should just take a moment to appreciate that. Winning 24 of your first 36 games is nothing to sneeze at. And like, as I've said all year, we have concerns and reservations about certain things that the team has shown us. Some of those are moving in the right direction. For example, early in the year, they were giving out a lot of walks and not recording many strikeouts. We look up today and suddenly the pitching staff is 13th in strikeouts per 9. And, the peripherals are lining up a little bit better with the performance. Like, we have reservations about the way the team has played and certain elements of the team, but the wins are banked. So when we are expressing concerns or appearing to complain, the concern is, how long can the Yankees allow this trend, whatever it is, to persist while still playing this well? And so, just as we were talking about slugging earlier, we want the Yankees to slug more because it's hard to win a lot without slugging. But it's terrific that they have won this much without slugging. And, no matter what happens, I think the Orioles are winning their game in Cincinnati right now. They are. But no matter what happens, at the end of the day, the Yankees will be tied for the lead in the American League in wins at worst. And to me, that's a pretty good position to be in.
Is it a stretch to say the Yankees and the Orioles are the two best teams in the league?
The American League?
Yeah.
No.
Because I feel like that's also context for what happened last week. Like, one, I guess, like, I forget who said it, but it's like, instead of getting upset, like, you think about, like, these games between two very good teams are close, and it comes down to moments, and sometimes they go one way, sometimes they go the other. But at the end of the day, like, what's more concerning is if the Yankees had 4 games like Thursday, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
They had 3 very competitive games, and Thursday happens. And I almost guarantee that, like, the way baseball works is the Yankees will win 2 out of 3 when the Orioles come to town in June. Like, the regular season is, it goes up and down, but, like, over time, you could, the wheat separates from the chaff. And I think the Yankees and the Orioles are clearly, like, they're some of the class of the league right now. And I don't think it's a shame to have, like, knowing what we know, how the rest of the week went, how the week went before, series wins against the Brewers and Tigers. Like, I think it's very clear that, like, those are 2 very good teams. The Yankees have things to work on, but it's not a shame to have done that against that team. Given how the rest of their season looks, I'm as an avid fan of Yankees Orioles division chases of years past. It might be the first time we get an honest to goodness Yankees Orioles division chase since 2012. And if it happens, like, I'm here for it because I think these are the teams to do it. And, some people said the Blue Jays might be there, but then they brought Alek Manoah back. Some people said the Red Sox might be there, but then they ran into the Red Hot Twins. Like, the Yankees and the Orioles just seem like they're on another level. And I think it confirms, like, what Pacoda thinks, what Fangraphs thinks, that these are going to be the teams. The Yankees have held up their end of the bargain for sure with the wins that they've banked.
So can we just take a second to appreciate there are 14 Yankees pitchers who have pitched at least 5 innings this year. More of them have an ERA of 0 than have an ERA over 4.
Yeah,
Nick Birdie and Clay Holmes both have 0 ERAs. Caleb Ferguson has a 4.15 ERA. He has the worst ERA of any Yankees pitchers pitch at least 5 innings. And that's insane. And he's moving in the right direction. I saw him pitch very well. The run prevention by this staff has been otherworldly. Like, they're second in the league in ERA. And given that I think we're both generally pretty confident in what the offense will be able to deliver. We're seeing Aaron Judge round into form. We're still seeing a productive version of Giancarlo Stanton. Anthony Rizzo hit a home run the other day. Juan Soto's obviously phenomenal. He had the bases clearing double today. The run prevention should, I think, allow us to be very bullish about where this team can go. And, I might be a little more wait and see about the offense, but the fact that they've prevented runs this well, they will add Garrett Cole at some point here shortly. Like, that's a very exciting position to be in. So before we move on to confidence, I just wanted to get that in. Like, we talked about some individual pitching performances. We talked about Luis Hill. We talked about Clark Schmidt. We talked about Clay Holmes, but the performance of this entire staff has just been off the charts and far exceeded anything I expected. And that is pretty great.
Yeah, against good, bad, the middle teams. I mean, it's just been awesome to see. I think for me, I also want to, we're talking about managers. Like Aaron Boone has had a great year. Like I think
he's made a lot of very good decisions.
A lot of good decisions. I think it relates to pitching staff, and where I feel like everybody is always going to have individual issues with like individual decisions. And I think it's fair to criticize in the moment, okay, I didn't like that much, but on balance, like he's pushed the right buttons. I mean, even the things that he hasn't done necessarily well, I feel like he's learned from. Like maybe it's just, like the team is good and that makes him look good. But I also think it's fair.
I think there's an element of that
too. I think there's a strong that, but like I don't want to be remiss in saying like I think he has done exactly what he's needed to. To me, like, the problem that I have with people's criticism of managers is a little bit different than yours. I think yours is more like they don't add anything and like you don't know how to quantify them. I think like people just have an opinion of managers and they don't like, like there's a lot that goes into it. And I think people just like, oh, the team plays well, this guy's good. Oh, I don't like this guy. Everything he does is now poor. I think you have to like credit them where they're due, detract where they're due, but also like appreciate that they can grow and learn. And I feel like Aaron Boone has definitely improved in my eyes over the last few years in terms of like all the things that matter to games and all the things that don't matter. And like, yeah, like it's obviously it doesn't look good when they don't play well. And, like that, the accountability stuff. I mean, that comes from frustration, but from where I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, or like in his first few years to now, I just feel like it's just a lot more confident, polished, like not that he was bad then, but I just feel like he's a manager that I feel like he adds something. Like I don't want him gone because not just because I think he's a good like leader. I think he actually is adding net positive to games, whatever that's worth. Maybe it's worth like a fraction of a win, but whatever it's worth, I do not feel like he is detracting from this team. And that's awesome. Like
I definitely agree that he's not detracting. I definitely agree with that.
That's like, I know you hate like managers add anything. So that's as like far as I feel like I would go.
No, but I think to your point, like the manager who, this is the question that I've posed on Twitter a million times that nobody wants to engage with is if you really dislike when a manager adheres to the decisions that the numbers would suggest he make, you need to be able to answer 3 questions. First question, when should a manager go against the numbers? Second question, how can a manager reliably tell that he's in one of those situations? And third question, how should we react when a manager goes against the numbers and it doesn't work? And Aaron Boone, I don't know that I have any obvious examples of him, not bringing in the best guy for the situation, except, the Tonkin thing, which I think we've talked about. We don't need to reopen the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Yeah.
But like, I think Aaron Boone generally with his pitching decisions has the right guy on the mound. Mm-hmm. And that's not true of everyone. I think it, in particular was not true of Joe Girardi. My baseball page at my baseball page 1 on Twitter has a phenomenal article about Joe Girardi's bullpen management or lack thereof, where basically, because he had defined, this guy pitches this inning, it didn't matter the game situation. And you had, Dellin Betances pitching with a 6-run lead and then unavailable to pitch in a 1-run game the next day. Like Aaron Boone, I think is very good at deciding who ought to be on the mound. And maybe that's not Aaron Boone's decision, but whoever is making that decision is very good at deciding who ought to be on the mound. And I've appreciated that. And I think one thing that is going unnoticed because the Yankees didn't ultimately score in the Monday game is Boone pulled the same move on Monday as on Wednesday to bring Clay in the 8th inning and let him, set him up to go over an inning.
Didn't he do it?
And he also did it. Yeah, he did it yesterday too. Like people, have decided that Aaron Boone, punts on games and whatever. He's been extremely aggressive in pursuing wins on the whole this year. And I'm surprised people aren't talking more about that because it seems like the kind of thing that his detractors would appreciate.
Yeah, and even the stuff from last Friday seems like there was more at play than we knew with like Ian Hamilton's at the end of the day, like the Yankees needed to score more runs to win that game. And at the end of the day, like I think people can criticize one decision all you want, but like look at the balance of everything.
Yeah, look at the body of work.
Nobody is perfect, but I think Aaron Boone, like you said, is putting the right guy on the mound more often than not. And one other thing, like with the pitching, like credit the starting staff because like for obvious reasons, but for me, like I think the first 2 weeks of the year, I was like, okay, this is going to be like 5 to 6 innings at best. And like, then you just put it to the bullpen. It kind of was like that. The bullpen was getting stressed. The starters are pitching real length and guys like, even like I was so against bringing Luis Gil out for the 6th on Friday that when he came out for the 7th, I was like,
yeah, I was saying the whole time he was out there in the 7th inning, I was going, man, this feels so greedy. I don't know about this.
But like the fact that like the starters are able to do that and generally be okay, like that credit to them. Because that really is such a surprise to me. Like I knew the pitching would be good, but I did not expect like Nestor to be going into the 7th as much as he is, or Teal to be pushing that, or Rodon, in a lot of outings having like 7 or 8 innings. I think that is by far and away, given the state of modern baseball, to have a pitching staff that can do that and to hopefully get a guy back who like is known for doing that. That's why I really think this team is set up for success.
Yeah, Nestor Cortez, now he has 8 starts. A lot of the guys immediately below him have 7. He's second in Major League Baseball in innings pitched. Tyler Glasnow has 50. Nestor has 48 and a third. That's insane.
That's 50. Well,
yeah, that's also insane.
Yeah. That's actually more insane. I don't care about Nestor.
So Whipple, I think we've gotten to that renowned part of the show when we discuss our confidence in the New York Yankees. So I'll throw it to you out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like if we recorded every Wednesday, I feel like our experience would be really different. And
it's so true.
For whatever reason, the Yankees are having this thing where they start slow and then they win the weekend series or sweep the weekend series in this case. And I just don't feel like I can bring a team down. I don't know if I can raise them up necessarily for a 4-3 week, but I don't feel like I can bring it below a 9 for everything that we've talked about, for winning 4 out of your last 5 games, for having some really great weekend performances, some all across the board great pitching performances. The offense is still trying to find the groove, but like the Yankees have played a pretty tough schedule, I think, at the early going. And this stuff, it's cold out. It's April. That stuff always kind of fixes when the weather gets warmer. The guys that they have, the Juans Sotos, and the Juans, sorry, I'm trying to do this right. The
Juan Soto and Aaron's Judge
of the world are going to paper over any, issues on the margins. And the guys on the margins are still helping, contributing. Oswaldo Cabrera, like single-handedly hitting games by hitting like 340 with runners in scoring position. I feel good. I'm excited for Houston to come to town this week. I'm excited to go to Tampa. I think there's a lot left to be done, but like for a week that they lost 3 out of 4 to Baltimore, like I'm actually surprised that like I feel this good, but I do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I also agree that you can't move them down after a week like this, but also probably wouldn't move them up. So that's going to be an 8.5 from me. Just a really good bounce back. I think that's how I see it. They won for the last 5 games they played. And they had a rough start to the way things went in Baltimore. They had a rough run in Baltimore, but to salvage a game in a 4-game series where you only score 6 runs, to pitch as well as they did on the whole, like, I think there's just a lot to like there. And so I'm going to stay at 8.5. I'm also excited to face Houston and Tampa. You know, those words could come back to bite me because those are teams that, you know, have certainly given me plenty of bad memories, but Framber Valdez is not someone the Yankees will see, as he is now on the IL. So I feel a little bit better than I did before. And, you know, you're just going to have to see what happens. You got to beat good teams. You got to beat bad teams. You got to beat pesky teams. And to this point this year, the Yankees have done that. And I think this week, as many of the weeks have been thus far, will be a good test of how this team does. But, you know, we haven't recorded on a losing week yet, right? The worst has been 3-3.
I think
so
yeah.
For the Yankees to start off 1-3 and preserve a winning week, I think was awesome. It makes me feel very good. And I think tomorrow will be a well-earned off day for them. I'm going to stick at 8.5. So before we wrap everything up, Whipple, any parting shots?
Yeah. So, you know, we had a fun time last week. We played Guess the Numbers, and I wanted to bring it back for a cameo appearance. So I'm going to read some numbers, and you're going to tell me what they mean. All right, ready?
I have a feeling I might know what numbers you're going to read me.
4, 6, 7, 6, 4, 6, 2, 13, 50.
Wait. So 4, 6, 7, 6. Wait, let me think. So this is Alek Manoah's current stat line.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go 4 innings.
Mm-hmm.
6 hits.
Yeah.
7 runs.
Yeah.
6 earned.
Yep.
What were the next numbers?
4, 6, 2.
4, 6, 2. Did he have 4 strikeouts?
4 walks, 6 strikeouts, 2 home runs,
nice.
And a nice old 13.50 ERA. Alek Manoah is fixed, ladies and gentlemen. I did read that. I think they had to call him up, and most likely will just send him back down. But
oh wow,
I'm so glad that he got this appearance. If this is his one appearance before going back to the minors, I can't wait to see what injury they think of next. And I ask you, is this it for him? Like, I know we laugh, but like, is he really done? Like, his career arc is just so shocking. Like, taking all the like dancing on his grave out of it, like this has to be the more shocking. Just like no injury, no scandal, just a pitcher completely losing it.
Yeah, it's extremely weird to see someone who was so good just instantly become this bad for this long. Like in 2022, he had some underlying stuff. Like he struck out far fewer guys and his BABIP was phenomenally low, that you're like, okay, maybe, some of the overachieving from 2021 will come down, or maybe, going into 2023, stuff's going to regress a little bit further. But then like just losing the strike zone and serving up meatballs all the time and spending, a year in the minor leagues and coming back and doing exactly the same thing. I don't feel like I've ever seen anything like this, especially without an injury. And let me emphasize that I can hardly think of someone who I'd rather see experience this.
Well said.
I know you said dancing on his grave aside, but I couldn't resist.
Well said. No further notes.
All right. So thank you everyone for listening. You can keep up with everything we do at YankeesFiles.com. You can follow us on Twitter, where we are at YankeesFiles. Our podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, with the added bonus of video on Spotify, and the whole video podcast goes up on YouTube, where we are at YankeesFiles. If you like the podcast, we hope you'll rate, review, subscribe, download, listen to it a bunch of times, all of that. If you don't like the podcast, we hope you only listen to it and don't leave negative feedback anywhere, because we don't need that from you. We will be back similar time, similar place next week to recap the week that was against the Astros and down in Tampa. Until then, enjoy the off day and let's go Yankees.